Welcome to the SME Symposium. Today we're going to be covering understanding medical indemnity in the UK. So we're going to get started on that. So basically the SME Symposiums, it's monthly webinars and it's really dedicated to keeping you up to date on relevant medical topics and sort of also easing the transition process going back to the UK. So everyone's welcome. It's completely free, and you know, we have Q&As at the end, and so on and so forth. So this is today's topic. So Rebecca is going to be covering medical indemnity. She works very closely with the MDU, and she does quite a few of these talks, so I'm really looking forward to her. So I'll hand it over to her, and she'll look after you all from here. Thank you, guys.
Just to introduce myself, Mrs. already just introduced me, but just to give you a bit of background of myself. So my name is Rebecca Cameron. I work with the Medical Defence Union. You'll often hear it shortened to the MDU, sort of within the NHS and doctors here in the UK. And we're the largest defence organisation here in the UK. So we've been asked to come to do a short talk with yourselves, just to give you an insight into what indemnity is, what a defence organisation does, how we support you, and common cases that we would commonly see. Now I'm conscious of, you know, this is our bread and butter work. I could probably talk to you all day about kind of the work that we do, and we do have a limited time today, so I will try my best to be concise. I'll go through the slides today, and then if you do have any questions, we can either do a Q&A at the end, or you can take down my email address and I'll happily answer any questions by email as well. But I really want to make sure that you guys get most of the time with me, so if you do have any questions, do please feel free to unmute yourself and ask me, or if you put them in the chat, I'm sure Machine will be able to feed that back to me as and when they come up. And I really want you to kind of make the most of the fact that you can ask me questions about indemnity, and I will do my best to make the next sort of half an hour or so as useful to you as possible. So hopefully it has moved on to the next slide now. So just to explain a little bit more about the MDU, or the Medical Defence Union. So we are the UK leading medical defence organisation. If you put all the other indemnity providers together, they still won't have as many doctors as us on our own. So it gives you a good idea of just how many doctors take out their indemnity with the MDU on a sort of yearly basis. But just for the sake of transparency, I'm obviously giving you the perspective of the MDU, that's who I work for. But there are lots of indemnity providers out in the UK. And when you're doing work as a doctor in the UK, we would encourage you to find out about your indemnity providers, find out about your different choices. Informed choice is always best. So you know your options and you know kind of what organisations do and how they support you. As you can see, some stats about the MDU. So in the last 5 years, we've taken around 47,000 cases with members and helped them through complaints or professional matters. So we have hundreds of thousands of doctors who are members with us. But in the last 5 years, we've had around 47,000 cases. So it does give you an idea of what I'm talking about today in terms of indemnity, claims, compensation, that sort of thing. It doesn't happen to doctors day in, day out, but it is important that you're aware of it because it is part of the work that you do as a professional. So you need to be aware of that. So I'm going to start with some of the basics. So the MDU is an MDO, bear with me on this. The MDU is obviously the name of the organisation I work for, the Medical Defence Union. We are what is classed as a medical defence organisation. So you'll often hear these shortened to MDOs in the NHS. An MDO is a non-profit organisation who offer medico-legal guidance, support and defence in addressing medico-legal issues such as complaints and claims. So there are two routes you can go down when you take out indemnity. You can take it out through an MDO, or you can take it out through an insurance company. And the indemnity is quite similar in terms of the support that you're offered. The biggest difference really is that an MDO is run predominantly or entirely by doctors and is a non-profit organisation. Insurance companies, much like car insurance or home insurance, they are profit organisations. They are designed there to make money out of the the indemnity that you've taken out with them. And I think just to kind of reiterate how that works. So at the MDU, we started back in 1885. We've been running for many, many years now. We started when a doctor was persecuted for he'd loosened a woman's clothing when she had an epileptic fit. He was wrongly persecuted and ended up in prison for it. She had basically accused him of assault. This was back in 1885, and what happened was a group of doctors pulled all their money together and their resources to pay his legal defence and to help him fight that case. That's where medical defence organisations started. We were the first ever, and we run pretty much in the same way ever since. The idea is that you pay a subscription amount to join the membership, and that pot of money that you've paid into is then used to pay the legal defence of any doctor that might need it who is in the membership. So that's what we are referring to when we say a non-profit organisation. It's doctors supporting doctors to make sure you have the legal defence should you need it. Now, two of the key questions I often get asked when I'm talking about defence organisations is, well, why do I need indemnity? And do I need to join one if I'm employed by the NHS? And they're two really good questions. So why do I need indemnity? The biggest reason you would need indemnity is to make sure that you are supported with something known as multiple jeopardy. I'm going to show you a slide on that in just a moment. If you look up the word indemnity in the dictionary, it quite literally means protecting someone from their own actions. So what we're referring to here for you as a professional is indemnity is about protecting you from any medico-legal issues such as claims, complaints, disciplinary investigations, GMC investigations, that sort of thing. So if someone wants to question a decision that a doctor has made in their professional work, it is their defence organisation that they would call, and that defence organisation would support them then through that legal process. Now, and do you need indemnity if you're with the NHS? The best way to describe this here is with this slide here. So if you speak to doctors who work in the NHS, they will often say that, well, their work is NHS indemnified, or you might hear it referred to as the Crown Indemnity Scheme. These things are exactly the same thing. So if someone says this, that they're NHS indemnified or they've got Crown Indemnity, they're talking about the same thing. And what they're talking about is that the NHS is going to pay out their claims for compensation if a patient was to put in a claim. So as long as you're doing NHS work and no private work, it is the NHS who picks up those claims for compensation. In the UK, it is a legal requirement that somebody, whether it is an external indemnity provider or the NHS, has agreed that they will pick up the costs of a claim for compensation. You must have that as an absolute minimum in order to work as a doctor here in the UK. And I often describe this to people as much like car insurance has two options. You have a fully comp option and you have a third-party fire and theft option when you take out car insurance. The third-party fire and theft option will protect all the users on the road, but it means if you get into an accident, it's not going to pay to fix your car. The fully comp option is going to protect both your own car and other users on the road. And indemnity works in the same way. So your NHS indemnity is effectively your third-party option. What it is there for is to make sure that if a patient sees you, that that patient isn't going to be disadvantaged by seeing you compared to another doctor who might have their compensation being paid. That, in other words, your patient is always going to have access to compensation should they be entitled to it. It is not there, the NHS indemnity scheme is not there to then support the doctor through the legal investigations, to help them write reports, to go with them to hearings. That is therefore the role of your defence organisation. Your defence organisation is there to help you through those things and to help you through the investigations and pay your legal fees. And it is the NHS's responsibility to make sure that your patients have access to compensation should they need it. So hopefully I've made that quite clear in terms of the difference between the NHS indemnity and the difference you get with a defence organisation. It's probably a bit easier to see on the slide here. So if you are working as a doctor, there could be an opportunity where there is a single clinical incident. Let's say, for example, you as a foundation doctor write a discharge letter. You've been asked by a consultant to go discharge a patient. You write the discharge letter. 2 days later, that patient comes back into hospital with a chest infection that was missed, and they're now putting forward a complaint to the hospital to say that this should have been picked up sooner and they shouldn't have been discharged. this is quite I've made this case up, but it is quite a kind of common example to give you an idea of how this would work. Okay, so the single clinical incident is that you've seen this patient once and you wrote a discharge letter. So it's a single point of contact. That single point of contact has the potential to lead to multiple different investigations when you're working here in the UK. For example, if that patient was to say they should never have been discharged and it has put them under undue stress, they might try and claim for compensation, albeit in this example it's probably unlikely to go through. But let's say, for example, they did. That would be the one in orange. Criminal investigation, the one underneath that would be relevant in this case. That would be for people who either weren't consented properly, so would say maybe someone had been assaulted, or worse, if there had been a death, there might be a manslaughter investigation. So they're examples of criminal investigations. Disciplinary and NHS complaints procedures, they're run internally by the NHS. GMC investigations are very much our bread and butter work that we do. The one in green, that's run by your regulatory body. Coroner inquests are looking at deaths, so the who, what, why. And CQCs look not at individual doctors or workers, but are looking at the level of care offered at the hospital. And then we put the media underneath that as well, because the media can pick up on stories, can make it publicly aware of investigations going on. So assuming they're going back to that example, that there's the discharge letter written, somebody's now putting a complaint, that would be the one in red, an NHS complaints procedure. Theoretically, let's say they then try and claim for compensation, that would be the one in orange, and then maybe they contact the GMC to say that that particular doctor shouldn't have done that particular thing. So that's one in green. So they would be 3 separate investigations that are now running based on one clinical incident, and that is what multiple jeopardy is. It's those investigations running simultaneously. Now, the NHS Indemnity scheme, as I mentioned earlier, is the one in orange, the top one. So you have that automatically. You don't need to apply for it or do anything with that. The NHS will pay out your claims compensation if you are taking on NHS work. All the ones underneath that are the ones picked up by a defence organisation. So this is something you will need to organise by yourself to make sure that is in place when you are working here in the UK. And that's to make sure you and your professional reputation is protected. Now, I know that if you haven't come across indemnity before, this can sound like quite scary stuff to talk about. Just to say, this isn't meant to scare you. It's actually very, very unlikely as a foundation doctor that you would be in a circumstance where you go through a full investigation. What is more likely is maybe you witness an incident, maybe if you're shadowing, or maybe you are asked to write a report based on your dealings with a particular patient, or even something like a coroner inquest. You might ask the S to write a report for that. They are far more likely for a foundation doctor. So it is very, very unlikely, but it is also important that when you do start your foundation programme, you are aware of these, that these investigations can happen, and how to protect yourself should you do find you're writing a report for one. So, as I say, I could give you lots of different examples of times people may call us for support. These are some of the common areas that we tend to see people would call us. I think the key ones really are people not taking appropriate consent or confidentiality, data protection breaches, regardless of where someone is at in their career, whether they are foundation doctor or consultant. We open cases up on these areas every single year. And again, you know, these things are, it doesn't necessarily mean that a doctor is unfit to practice. Mistakes can happen. I myself used to run clinics in mental health, and I had a data protection breach in which clinic letters went to the wrong patient. So these things do happen. And I think what's really important to reiterate here is to not panic if a mistake happens, but to think about what we could learn from that experience and what support you need in place to help you with that investigation, to reflect on it and learn from it. There isn't necessarily a body of people out to try and get doctors. We are all there to try and support one another. But what is important is we recognise when there are times we would do things differently and to learn from that experience. So as I say, these are kind of areas that we might see cases. I'm just going to give you one example with the time that we have. So I just picked the top one for now. Use of social media sites. Now, you probably use social media, I would assume, quite regularly. probably a lot more than me, so you probably have a good idea of actually how social media works. And you would think actually with people using social media a lot more that maybe they were a lot more savvy and careful about what they use it for. And yet every single year we have cases opened on social media and what doctors have shared on social media. So this is something that we've started to talk about to make doctors aware and just be cautious about how much information they're putting on social media. So this type of case that occurs every year, it's something that is useful for us to discuss in thinking about how social media can be used. Breaches of confidentiality are usually by accident, but can be done using social media. And the example I often give is a couple of years ago, Jeremy Hunt, who is a well-known person, actually posted a photo on his own Twitter account of him with a group of junior doctors, hoping to kind of look like he was part of them and supporting them. And actually what he did was, in the photo behind him was a whiteboard full of patient names, and that was shared on his Twitter account. So it's a really clear and obvious example of a data protection breach that should have been picked up really, but wasn't, and these things do happen accidentally. So let's have a look at quite a simple case then. So let's imagine you're a Foundation 2 doctor. This doctor has had a very long shift at work. She's feeling very frustrated about how busy things are and how rushed she's been. So what she does is she goes onto Facebook and she effectively puts a rant up on her Facebook profile, something along the lines of that she's unhappy with work, they're too overworked, there's not enough staff, and the hospital should do better, along those lines. While she did not name patients, so she didn't breach confidentiality in the sense of specific individuals, she did describe the hospital in disparaging terms and was critical of nursing colleagues. This doctor was then alarmed to subsequently receive a letter from her employing trust, who considered the remarks brought to the trust under distribute and was disrespectful to colleagues, and that this could be a disciplinary offence. It'd be interesting to know if any of you are surprised to hear that you could face disciplinary action for bringing your trust under distribute. I don't know whether anyone has any comments on that or thoughts. Not to worry if you're staying muted. Might be something that you want to think about, whether this is something that you would be aware of in terms of GMC guidance. The GMC have lots of guidance for doctors, and as a general rule of thumb, if you stay within your GMC guidance, then chances are you're on the right side of any investigation. So what we very much do to support our doctors is we would always show how, in their normal daily practice, they fall in line with GMC guidance, and then that's the standard that they're set against. So even if mistakes do happen, if 99% of the time we can show that actually what they do day in, day out falls in line with the guidance, then that doctor's on quite safe territory. The GMC did release guidance on social media in 2013. It states standards expected of doctors do not change because they are communicating through social media. However, using social media creates new circumstances in which established principles apply. So what they're referring to here is that you wouldn't put something on social media that you won't be happy to put in somebody's medical records or even in a newspaper, for example. You would be expected to treat social media in exactly the same way. Even if you view social media as a private account in which you only have friends on, you should deem it in the same way and the same sort of exposure levels that you would, as I say, writing a report in a paper. We do have lots of doctors who do use social media or platforms such as doctors.net in order to share cases and to offer advice. You're obviously welcome to do that if you are a registered doctor. However, from our point of view as a defence organisation, we would just encourage you to use accounts as a professional account and a personal account. So keep them entirely separate. Do not mix them. And then if you do have a professional account, anytime you give any sort of advice, you should make it fully aware it's coming from a registered doctor, and you give your GMC registration number so somebody can check on the registration that it's coming from a valid source. Be cautious that individual pieces of information might not breach confidentiality on their own, but actually with other bits of information, it could then identify patients. So again, we've had many cases where things like a doctor has shared on something like doctors.net about a rare case that they have, and what they've said is that they're discussing the case. It's an extremely rare condition. Has anyone got any further experience with this particular case? So it seems quite anonymous and straightforward. However, on this person's profile, it explains where this person works in the hospital. In that particular hospital or in that particular area, let's say there's only 2 or 3 people in the UK who have this rare condition, it very quickly becomes apparent which patient they are now talking about. So it's not necessarily about the information you've put out there, but actually whether all the pieces of information could be put together to then identify a patient. If a patient contacts you about their care or other professional matters through a private profile, you should indicate that you cannot mix social and professional relationships. So again, just reiterating, and you probably will get this once you start working as a doctor, patients trying to find you online, trying to find your Facebook profiles, your Instagram profiles, whatever else you might be on. Be very cautious about that. You shouldn't be accepting sort of like friend requests or whatever else it might be of patients on those accounts, unless it is, as I say, a professional account that you are keeping. So coming back to the scenario I put forward of the doctor who had spoken about her trust in disparaging terms. The trust ran an internal investigation. The doctor received a warning that stayed on her record for 6 months. There was a referral made to the GMC about her professional code of conduct. However, the GMC, having looked at it, decided not to sanction the doctor or take the investigation further because this doctor had apologised and showed remediation for it. So what this doctor had actually done, which is probably quite an extreme thing to do, but I think it was probably quite a clever move, was she actually closed her Facebook account and then she wrote a letter of apology to the hospital and explained that she understood how this would affect the reputation of the hospital and how that could affect the trust of the patients. So her remediation being that she reflected on it and then taken steps to show that she had acted on that reflection and she'd taken on board what had been said. This doesn't mean you have to obviously close your Facebook account. That's not what I'm trying to get at with this scenario. But what I'm trying to explain is how, if there is an investigation happening, offering an apology, showing remediation, showing you've used it as a learning experience is going to be the thing that will help you most in that investigation. Now, I did mention GMC Guidance. I mean, if you quite literally Google GMC Guidance, it will bring up the GMC website. It is really important to be aware of what is in the GMC Guidance before you start work. The key one is your good medical practice guide, which is being reviewed this year, actually. But other key ones are things like consent, confidentiality, treating children, leadership, end of life, and safeguarding. They have around 30 pieces of guidance, but they're your key ones. And it is important you know what is in them because, as I say, they're the bar that you're measured against. So, staying out of trouble. Once you start your foundation program, you're going to be working in a huge complex system, and that can be a real positive because it means if you don't know something, you should always ask. There is always going to be somebody who has a level of expertise, somebody who's more senior, and you can really use that as an opportunity to double check things that you're maybe not sure about. The worst thing you can do in the NHS, and this goes right from foundation doctor to consultant, is make a singular decision by yourself if you are unsure. And even our consultants, even our private practice members, they all, if there is a grey area and they are working in something medico-legal, they would always use MDT, multidisciplinary decision making, in order to check with another doctor and to check to see what they would do in that circumstance. If you can't get in touch with a senior colleague, you can also call your defence organisation. We have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week advice line. It is manned entirely by doctors who are also legally trained, and their role is to support you on the front line. So if you had, let's say, for example, a family member comes in and they are demanding to see their daughter's notes, they're saying their daughter's 16, they need to know what's in the record and why they've been brought in. You're not sure if, as a doctor, you should be discussing the case, whether the 16-year-old is given consent or not. Maybe this falls in a grey area, maybe you're not sure what to do at this circumstance and you can't speak to a senior colleague. If, for an example like that, absolutely what you would do is you call your defence organisation. We would be able to give you advice there and then over the phone, and you can note that in the record in terms of the advice you were given. So it protects you because you've documented you were following advice, and it also means that we have a record of that, so we can support you if there were any queries around that. Communicate openly and clearly with patients and colleagues. You're going to be working in quite a time-pressured environment. There will be lots of people who will want your time. From our perspective, it is better for you to see 5 patients well and to spend time with each of those 5 patients, communicating openly, communicating clearly with them, spending enough time with them to run a full consultation, than to try and fit in 10 patients and see them badly. If you rush through patients, you're going to struggle with your communication, and that is where a third of all complaints come in. So if you can work on your communication, you can effectively cut your chances of getting a complaint by around a third, simply by communicating well with patients. Make sure you spend time to actually fully understand what the problem is, and they know the treatment pathway going forward. Document everything. Again, don't feel rushed through to not document. This is the thing that is going to protect you if there are any queries or any investigations. So do make sure you document every decision that you've made, and what treatment pathways there are. Be open to constructive feedback and criticism. This shouldn't be seen as a negative, and I think whether you are a doctor, whether you are a teacher, or much like myself, whether you go out and do seminars, we should all be open to constructive feedback. It makes us better at our job. So don't be afraid to hear constructive feedback and take it on board and think, okay, that makes me a better doctor for tomorrow, so I would do things differently next time. Speak up if there is a problem. Going in, particularly at your level, so going in sort of at foundation level, you're going to be going into the NHS with fresh eyes, and that is a real positive. You're going to be able to see things differently to people who are running those clinics and wards day in, day out. So if you think that things could be done differently, say so. Raise it in an MDT, raise it maybe with your educational supervisor when you have meetings with them. It is a really positive opportunity that you have in order to go in with fresh eyes and think, actually, this is a near miss, so maybe we could do things differently, or you've seen it being done differently in a different hospital. And upon the end, be nice. You know, there will be times where you are on the wards and it will feel stressful. The job can feel stressful at times. It can also be incredibly rewarding. But it's really important that no matter who you're working with, that there is a sense of camaraderie there and that you're nice to one another. There should never be a sense of a hierarchy there. You are all there to help patients, and you're all there to be able to do that job. If something does go wrong, firstly, take a breath. Don't panic. These things will happen at some point. No one can do their job perfectly 24 hours a day. That would be impossible. So if something does go wrong, or you hear that a complaint has come in, or you've been asked to write a report, take a breath and then think about what steps you need to take now. So reflection is key in focusing on when you're looking at what went wrong. Think about what you can learn from that opportunity. Take advice. I'm jumping down a bit here, but when you're thinking about those reflections and then starting to put it down on paper, take advice. Speak to your defence organisation, speak to your educational supervisor, speak to senior colleagues. Don't be afraid to get that advice. In worst case scenario, and we have again had this where doctors have tried to write a report quickly because they are pushed for time, so they've just simply remembered the patient from a couple of weeks ago, wrote down a few notes, send that off as their report, and actually then what they've written in their report is different to then what is in the records. You're then facing a far bigger issue because there are contradictory statements out there than if you had sought the advice and made sure that your report was right the first time. So do make sure you seek advice if there are any sort of queries. Apologise if appropriate. No one's going to make you apologise. You don't have to, but we find from our perspective it goes an awful long way and can certainly help de-escalate an investigation very quickly. So it will save you time, it will save us time, and it often makes the patient feel a lot better. So it's not a liability of guilt. It doesn't mean somebody can claim compensation because you've apologised, but it does tend to help. So if you feel it's appropriate and you feel happy to do so, we would always encourage you to do so. Offer remediation, cooperate with the investigations, If you receive a letter, as I say, either from the GMC or from your employer, call your defence organisation straight away and we will talk you through the next steps. So if you are joining as an FY1, so as a foundation doctor, you can actually use, if you have a phone in front of you, you can get your phone out now, use the camera on your phone to scan the QR code on the bottom right. This will take you through to the application form that you need to apply for foundation indemnity. So that's if you're obviously going on to foundation programme this year. You can apply any point for your foundation indemnity a year in advance. So you can do it at any point between now and, if you're starting, I would assume end of July, beginning of August is when they normally take on the foundation doctors. So if you're starting then, you can do it any time between now and the day that you start. You fill out the form, and then what we do is we actually post then the 3 books you can see in front of you. You can pick one of those and we post it to you. So that's kind of like a thank you incentive for setting that up early. Just to say in terms of cost, so there is a small fee for FY1 doctors. We make a payment of, we ask for a payment of £10, and that's a one-off payment of £10 that covers the entire FY1 year's indemnity requirements that you need. That then gives you access to the 24-hour-a-day medico legal advice line that I talked about, support with any investigations should it come up, professional development resources, so you can log into the MGU website, you can access free medico legal seminars, e-learning webinars. We've got quite a number of different types of those, including ones around wellbeing, ones around using social media, confidentiality, all the kind of key areas that I might have mentioned. We will have e-learning on those if you want to go in and look at those further. And so, as I say, all of this will cover the indemnity for all the work that you do on your FY1. What we've also done ever since, well, it came about since first lockdown of COVID actually, there is a £10 payment for an FY1, but half of that actually goes to charity. So either the Doctors Support Network or the Royal Medical Benevolent Fund. These are 2 charities that run here in the UK that are designed to support doctors with their well-being, their stress levels, or support doctors through sickness if they've had to have time off work. So £5 goes towards the MDU to cover your indemnity costs. £5 then goes to charity as well. So you do get charged £10, but you will know that £5 of that is supporting doctors through charities. Once you've filled out your indemnity application, I would also encourage you to then set up an online account. So just because you have your indemnity with the MDU, we don't automatically set you up an online account. So what you would do is you would go register a new user on the MDU, and it would ask you for your full name, your date of birth, and your postcode. You pop those in and then it creates you an account. You can then use that online account to just update your details going forward. Doctors tend to find this quite useful because there's an MGU app as well where you can download documents that you might need. You can keep your MGU number in your wallet, your phone wallet. I don't know what the electronic wallets are they called. So you can keep all those things with you. So when you actually start your role, if you need to contact the MGU or someone asks about your indemnity, you have it on your phone to hand. And one last thing I just wanted to mention, something a bit more fun and light-hearted. We are actually running a photo competition at the moment. So if you are on Instagram, what you can do is you can email us a photo at photos@themdu.com, or you can post it, as I say, online with the hashtag MDU Memories, and you could then be in with a chance of winning £80 Just Eat vouchers. So I believe we run this every 3 months. We give out the £80 vouchers, and it's a really more than if you've just got 5 minutes to have a look. It's really nice actually to see what other people are up to. It's a good way to kind of see what sort of things that people have been doing, particularly during lockdown. So if you do have something that is related to either study or starting work, and you've got a good photo or video that captures it, then put the hashtag MGU Memories and therefore you'll be entered into the competition. I do hope you have found that helpful. It really was a whistle-stop tour of indemnity and kind of what to expect. But as I say, I'm more than happy to take questions now. But equally, if you want to take note of my email address, it's rebecca.cameron@themdu.com. I can work as your direct point of contact with all things related to the MDU and indemnity. So whether that's a question you might have, or whether it's about applying for membership, or you want a reference to case studies, which we've got on our website, I can send you those as well. So feel free to make a note of my email address. And as I say, for anyone who is starting in FY1, you can apply using the QR code bottom right screen. Does anyone have any questions whilst I'm here on the call?
So I'm gonna quickly jump in, Rebecca. Thank you so much. While we wait for questions, I'm quickly gonna just interrupt you. I just need to go over asking everybody for feedback. So everybody, if you guys can give us some feedback and fill in feedback forms, you should be able to find them in the Q&A. It should be over there, just a little link, or you can just use this little QR code over here. Apart from that, Rebecca, thank you so much. That was really, really amazing, and gave us quite an in-depth insight of just the MDU itself and medical indemnity. Just before we do finish up, I just want to quickly go over our scholarship prize draw. So basically what we do is we're giving out scholarships, 45 of them. We're giving out 5 every month, which is amazing, and it pretty much covers half your tuition fee, which is just amazing. So I'm actually going to do it now. I have all the names listed over here, and basically I need to pick up 5 names. So I have this random name picker, and here you go. This is your winners. So congratulations. What to do is you're probably best getting in touch with SME through the email. So just drop them an email and just let them know that you've won. Which is amazing. I'm just going to pop this over here so it doesn't get lost. I also want to thank Lectorio for being our sponsors. They've been absolutely great. So a big thank you to them. And if you guys have any other questions for Rebecca, please do ask away. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here. I know you had to reschedule and come out here, so thank you so much for doing that, and it was really great to have you on just all together. Do you have any final comments for the students?
No, I don't. Thanks ever so much, and apologies once again for having to reschedule. Unfortunately, I got hit by the dreaded COVID, so I do.
Yeah. How are you feeling?
I feel much better now. Luckily, I wasn't hit too hard. I have seen that somebody's asked a question about indemnity with regards to electives and observations in the UK. What I would say is you will be covered by NHS indemnity for those things. And if you're observing, I think realistically, you would be fine to rely on that, because you're not actually actively part of the patient care, the treatment pathway. I think I'm more referring to once you're starting work as a doctor, that's when you're going to need to arrange this, the indemnity with the defence organisation. But if you're observing as a medical student, whilst it is good practice to have it in place, I think realistically, a lot of people often would then rely on the NHS indemnity scheme. So hopefully that does answer the question. But if you do have any further questions, I'm happy to look at them now.
Amazing, Rebecca. Thank you so much. You have a good evening, and hopefully we will have a chance to see you again another time. Thank you so much.
That would be great. Hopefully speak to you soon.